Friends, I want to talk for just a little bit. I just finished doing an updated video about the census data tutorial, where you can look at American Fact Finder and USA.com, and you can learn more about the people in your community. Well, the next piece of a community risk assessment, and keep in mind that we are just kind of hitting the top of the iceberg with this. It's a very detailed process. But the other piece of it that you have to look at is your problem related data. And it's not as easy as it sounds to do that. You would think that with all the reporting that we do in fire and EMS, that you'd be able to push a button and it would spit it out. Well, that's not the way it is anymore, or ever was. And we still have so much more to do in that area. When we're talking about problem-related data, we're talking about what hazards affect the community. And those can be man-made, they can be natural. Man-made hazards such as fires, car crashes, all of those trauma-type emergencies that we respond to. It could be an active shooter. It could be hazardous materials incident, all of those types of things that we refer to as man-made. Or it could be natural, and those are our earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, thunderstorms, winter storms, all of those kinds of things. And so when we look at those things, we want to see, the whole goal is to determine, it's kind of to match up the risks, the problem data and the people data, meaning what risk is happening to whom, who, to what people, to what demographic of group. An example is if we respond, say EMS responds to a large number of calls where people have fallen. Who is falling? If we have a large population of elderly, of our senior adults living in the community, then it's most likely them. But we want to match that up by looking at our problem-related data to see what the problem is and who it's happening to. Other things that, other types of things that we look at when we're looking at people is what puts them at risk. A risk is the likelihood of being injured or affected by a hazard. A hazard is the event or the activity that creates the risk. So don't get those two things confused. I think there's some stuff on the website about the difference in a risk and a hazard. But we want to figure out what is happening to which groups, if there is a specific group, if we can nail that down in some way. And so we can find out who lives in our communities, but it's harder to find out what we respond to. At the fire department, we use something called the National Incident Fire Reporting System, NFIRS for short, NFIRS. So if you see that abbreviation, that's what that means, the National Incident Fire Reporting System. There's also GFIRS, GFIRS, which, you guessed it, is the Georgia Fire Incident Reporting System. And I will be interested in hearing from our friend from out of state. I pointed up north, I think it's Wisconsin, what they use, what kind of system they have. But everybody reports. The way it works is that here in Georgia, we report to the state fire marshal's office. Each individual fire department reports every year, annually, the number of incidents. Does their incident reporting to the state fire marshal's office. And so that report, in turn, is uploaded to the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which is housed at the National Fire or the United States Fire Administration at the National Fire Academy facility in Maryland. You would think that you could go to the website and find that data. And I looked and I could not find it by state. You can see national data. And if that's all you can get, that's fine. And when I say that is a lot of times it's hard to get very localized data, especially when we're talking about, let's talk about injuries. that's a whole different system. And when we're looking at getting data on the people that were transported, the nature of their injuries, the seriousness of their injuries, number one, we have HIPAA regulations that don't allow that a lot of that information to be shared, that personal information to be shared. I know when I worked at Hall County, many of our, at that time anyway, many of our serious injuries were transported by air ambulance, so they never went into our system, and so they weren't reported. So capturing data is hard. You can go to the CDC's website, and there's something called Whiskers. It's WISQARS, I think, is how they spell it. Don't ask me what that stands for. I can't remember right now. I should have brought it up before I started this video, but it's cdc.gov, and then it's the National Injury Prevention Center. So we have to kind of sometimes make some assumptions about the problems in our community. Many times, especially if you work in a large, let's say you work in a county, and you're at one station and you have a response area, you know what's going on in your response area. You know what kind of calls you're responding to. You know the type of people that you're responding to, and that carries weight as well. So when we're talking about gathering data about the problem, it's not always as easy as it sounds. We should be able, in this day and age, to press a button and get that information, just like we can with census data. But it's not that easy. So if you struggle with this, if you are active in a fire department, you should have someone there that is responsible for your incident reporting management, and that handles that. It could be anybody. If you work for an EMS agency, I know that you do PCRs and that information is reported to the state. And Courtney Twilliger, you could probably help us out here as well. And maybe this might be a good conversation for one of our virtual classes. But there may be a way to get it from the state EMS, Office of EMS, as to what the injuries are here in Georgia. You can look at that CDC website at Whiskers. You can look at, what we looked at with USA.com. You had information about weather events and hazards and things like that. So it's not as easy to capture the problem data. But when I refer to problem data, it's like, what kind of calls do we respond to? What is happening to people? Is it fires? Well, if it's fires, what kind of fires? Are they cooking fires? Are they candle fires? Are they arson fires? We want to dig deep into the data, because the whole reason that we're doing this is to target with as much specificity and focus as we can on a particular issue and a particular group of people, so that we address that problem, so that we find a way to prevent that problem from happening. That's the whole goal of risk reduction, is to try to make sure that we are focused and we're strategic, that we're not just throwing this out to everybody, that we know what the issues are in our community. I'm doing a lot of work right now with the National Fire Academy on some courses that they're creating on community risk reduction. One is they're self-study courses, and at some point in time, they will be a part of this course when they're developed. And one is on community risk reduction, the process, and another is on community risk assessment. So I'm kind of deep into this right now, but I also realize that I probably haven't provided you with enough information on the course site to work through all of this. And so I'm trying to fill in some of the gaps with some of these little short lectures, with some demonstrations. I want you to kind of grasp what's going on, especially if you're not familiar with fire or emergency services language and lingo and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to throw anybody off. I think I mentioned in the other video infers, and you may have thought, what is she talking about? So make sure that you pay attention to these little videos. I'm going to be putting them in as we go through the course this semester to make sure that I'm filling in those gaps. But just when we're talking about this problem-related data, what are the issues? What are the hazards in my community? Why do people call 911? And that we can affect a change with. So if you have any questions about this, or if you're confused, be sure to let me know, and we can discuss it. I do want to try to schedule a virtual classroom soon, so that we can all make sure that we're on the same page. But in the meantime, just let me know, and I'll be glad to get back with you. Thanks so much, and you guys have a great day.